Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Right Opinion, the home of a twat with too much free time, and Philip DeFranco. What a character. Yes, one of the platform's veterans for multiple reasons, DeFranco embodies how success within YouTube can expand and develop in many unique ways. The 32-year-old has been on the platform for over 10 years now, and he has had his fair share of prosperity. But there are always two sides of the coin, and when you're in his position, the knives are never too far from your throat. Often my videos will involve talking about a long chain of events, and the chain of events that inspired the DeFranco show are too many to detail into one section. However, I will give a brief overview of his history. DeFranco started up his channel while he was still at university in the true entrepreneurial spirit. The channel at first was called Sexy Phil and obviously reflected the highly dignified manner that he was going to conduct himself with. If you can detect a slight tone of sarcasm within my voice, it's because DeFranco wasn't exactly the same person 10 years ago than he is today, and one of his earliest successes was a video by the name of Big Boobs and You, which, as the title described, included big boobs and you, but mostly DeFranco discussing it. The intro is a slightly improper disclaimer warning that if you do not enjoy the objectification of women, you may not enjoy this video. I've put it a bit more politely than he did. In all fairness, it is pure corn and it is quite amusing for what it's worth. And one observation that can be made is that an asset that is identifiably consistent with even his recent content is his on-camera charisma. He still has that grasp with the audience. Back in the days of yore, you could have low production value and still appeal to an audience. And it is amazing how technology has evolved. The sort of content that DeFranco uploaded would be ridiculed in a modern day scenario, but this was 2007 and classics like Big Boobs and You thrived in that environment. So taking heed of its success, DeFranco made this style the center of appeal within his channel. Not big boobs of course, though they weren't excluded by any means, but he quickly made his videos focused around the discussion of topics that were gonna hit that appeal. Basically, Philip DeFranco was one of the earliest pioneers in the clickbait niche, but unlike his 2000s contemporaries, he managed to stick it out as his personality matured like a fine cheddar, whereas many of those around him became quickly stale. He managed to stay relevant by keeping ahead of the time. As he grew, he paid attention to the site changing and evolving, and in essence, he evolved with it. He realized that calling people rug munchers probably would not wash with all of his newer audience, and also understood that you have to branch out to maintain success. One of the things that a majority of larger YouTubers will tell you is that you shouldn't limit your success to merely YouTube, or you quickly become dependent on a platform that can decide whether it wants you to have a good or bad day. DeFranco clearly understood this and has ventured out on many enterprises, including multiple channels, brand deals, business undertakings, all while maintaining a strong YouTube presence. It's very clear that DeFranco has created a lot of opportunities for himself, but he still has an underlying fondness for the platform that has enabled his opportunities as he has continued to upload to this day. In many ways, that respect appeared to be reciprocal. YouTube even decided to feature him in the end of their 2017 rewind, and in spite of the very rocky year for YouTube, that decision was at least praised. Love him or hate him, Philip DeFranco has persisted through many generations of YouTube and has amassed a consistent fanbase, and that is fair. His brand of news, although not necessarily exceptional within its presentation, manages to balance the delivery of information with some moderate, if fairly ordinary opinions. I think the main reason that DeFranco has retained an audience is that element of trust. Unlike a lot of news corporations, he's never presented as having an ulterior agenda. Sure, he has his opinions, and you're gonna agree with some and disagree with others, but it doesn't seem like he's conveying those opinions for any reason other than the fact that he likes to express himself. Whereas many corporation news channels do seem to have that slanted take before they even approach the story within that. DeFranco always takes it from a case-by-case basis, and through that, he's definitely carved himself a niche on the YouTube landscape. However, in the last year, a fair few developments have occurred. Firstly, after a series of partnerships, DeFranco announced that he had retained control of his assets and was launching the DeFranco Elite, a paid subscription that would fan fund his content, and he also announced the intention to expand on a network. And although it's all kind of vague and up in the air, that's the basic premise. In a way, he wants to become independent, and one can respect that. But the situation is greater than that, and DeFranco has uploaded multiple videos, most recently just over a month ago, in which he uploaded a video titled Tired, Frustrated, but also excited, in which he reflected over the recent wave of demonetization on his latest content and the views that appear to have been affected by it. He has also been highly vocal about this on his Twitter. And that's what I wanted to discuss today, because the way DeFranco often discusses these problems can give an audience the perception that this is a generality in the way that YouTube are behaving. Whether intentional or not, I don't really think that's the case. What do I mean by that? Well, today I open the case of YouTube and how Philip DeFranco became a target. The thing is, I've made my videos on this budding old platform for a while, and what I know is that although a fair few videos of mine are demonetized, most are not, and the situation has significantly improved in the last few months. The algorithm's still fairly useless, but it is better, and that's something that may be surprising to anyone outside of this. To see someone as reputable as DeFranco being here does beckon a further question about how it has happened. Nonetheless, to really understand the depth of the current situation, we have to get some history on it. We have to go back in time. Back to 2007 to be precise, to really understand the evolution of the YouTube landscape. So, without further ado, let's get to it. YouTube was up and running, but it needed some form of income, so in May 2007 they created the Partnership Program, which enabled popular creators to monetize their videos with the inclusion of AdSense units. However, back then they were particularly selective and it was individually handed out. Not everyone could get a partnership. DeFranco, amassing a reasonable audience himself, was allocated one of these. To put this into perspective, at this point he stood alongside the likes of Smosh, Nigahiga, and Fred. Quite the clique. Eventually, as YouTube began to grow in popularity, they realized that they could expand this and became more and more liberal with how they handed out these monetization passes. This on principle doesn't seem like an intrinsically bad idea. However, as they soon found out, it came back to bite them on the arse. YouTube continued to grow and grow and grow. And eventually, fringe groups who would otherwise not be represented on a platform mainly about entertaining viewership saw great opportunity to distribute propaganda. At the same time, YouTube's growth also attracted an interest of competing media who realized the actual threat that YouTube's current status posed. These were two independent but coinciding formulas that inevitably led to the media turning quite viciously on the video sharing platform, and DeFranco himself was obviously caught up in the fray of this. But what a lot of people tend to forget is that he was actually caught by YouTube's preemptive measures, you know, the ones that absolutely failed even before YouTube imploded in on itself. In 2016, yes, 2016, he uploaded a video titled, "YouTube is shutting down my channel and I'm not sure what to do." A video in which he begins by citing concerns on the demonetization of his previous video, but as the video progresses, we witness him learning more about the issues surrounding his channel and closing with him asking what the plan of action should be. As of May 2018, that video has attained over 6 million views. This concern about monetization has now been extended to a concern about views. In this video, we mentioned earlier how he noted that although monetization may not be a problem in itself, he was receiving feedback from viewers that they weren't being notified of new episodes, particularly prevalent in videos that had been denied ads on appeal. Now, one of the statements that he posed in his original video about demonetization was the suggestion that YouTube might be trying to force him off the platform. But why would they do that? Why would they try to censor one of their most iconic creators? Well, let's break down the main options. The first option is probably the most cynical, that YouTube has an agenda and that Philip DeFranco doesn't align with it, and that they are actively trying to suppress his voice on the platform and eventually want to kick him off.
Get the fuck out!
The second option is that due to YouTube rewriting their terms and conditions, DeFranco was caught by the fallout of such rules and therefore lost monetization on many of his videos. Or the third, which we'll save till later. Which one is it? Let's try and work it out.
Now I understand.
Option 1. Now, it is quite clear that YouTube has an agenda. You go on their channel and you can see that they're trying to appeal to that wide-eyed millennial charm that many advertisers like to see. It's wafer thin and transparent, but you guess it does the job. But is there something more deeply ingrained? Well, to do that, we have to assume that demonetization is going to hurt DeFranco's voice. How would they do that? Cutting money probably won't make the difference, especially as he now has a separate subscription service, so they must be trying to cut the views and get rid of his representation. But to do that, we'd have to at least be able to imply that there is an algorithm that is reducing views. To do that, we have YouTuber Nerd City, who revealed some revelations of his own kind. In his first video, uploaded approximately half a year after the original demonetization scandal, he published published information from a researcher known as CeeLo, who found a significant difference in relative views between content that was monetized and content that was demonetized. However, YouTube responded, saying that demonetization didn't cause the loss in views. Well, everyone for a moment seemed briefly stumped. But lack of causation doesn't mean there isn't a correlation, and perhaps a third variable that influences both of these outcomes. And returning to the drawing board, CeeLo published more comprehensive findings that basically meant that although the monetization system may have ran independently, there was a consistent link, this time to a rating system that gave videos rated mature less views, and one which advertisers used themselves to discern which videos they wanted to promote on. So we've attributed a much more clearer cause, and one that hasn't been disputed. Now, if demonetized videos get less views, although the cause of it isn't the demonetization, there is a correlation. We can say that demonetized videos are more likely to be rated mature as well, and thus garner less views. And given the fact that advertisers base their promotion around the rating system in question, means that obviously there is going to be a tremendously noticeable link. So we establish a connection. Suppressing monetization could suppress views. They could be censoring Philip DeFranco. Why would they do that? Well, he certainly doesn't fit the politically correct shield that YouTube often attempt to push. DeFranco himself is a libertarian, and it shows. In his old content, he's an edgy boy.
Main point, I'm not gonna let Goat Fuckers International change the way I live my life.
And is new, he still retains a very unique tone. Sure, it's infinitely more mature, but if there's one thing that companies don't like, it's individuals who cannot be externally influenced. And some have credibly hypothesized that DeFranco is just too independent for the platform, given their recent push for the content that is a lot more focus tested. DeFranco has visibly been unhappy about that. He's been one of the most vocal in calling them out on a lot of bullshit that's been going on behind the scenes. Even if they didn't hate him before, they sure hate him now. One of the most notable situations was in the aftermath of the Las Vegas attack, when Casey Neistat made a video in which he notified users that he created a GoFundMe and also pledged any AdSense from that video. However, his video was demonetized and he tweeted to vent his frustration. YouTube responded, saying that they have a clear policy on it. Fair enough, not for Phil. In a humiliating moment for YouTube, he revealed that they were happily running advertisements on other content based around the tragedy. In this instance, the Jimmy Kimmel content they're always pushing into our faces. The tweet and the subsequent video he released attracted a ton of publicity, and I guarantee that DeFranco didn't make many new friends at YouTube headquarters that day. However, if they actually wanted to suppress DeFranco, why haven't they hit him harder?
What's important here is the huge surge of young people that tuned in to see the grand jury announcement and then unfortunately to see the violence that followed afterwards. I've heard many complaints about...
Well, it's about the backlash effect. Many people have the power to manipulate the world around them. Many have the power to manipulate other people, algorithms, and so on. However, the moment that those people realize that they are being manipulated, they will likely wholly turn on the manipulator. So if YouTube really did want to usher DeFranco off the website, they'd have to do it by very subtle coercion, as he has extensive influence over a large audience. He'd likely still make a lot of noise regardless, but they'd have to make it seem natural enough so other people didn't care or people felt that his complaints were unjustified. So we've handed YouTube a means, motive, and opportunity, but just because that option makes sense doesn't mean it's the only sensible option. Let's discuss the second option. As I said earlier, back when YouTube were being very selective with who they partnered with, DeFranco would obviously receive an unconditional pass because he was part of a very special group of people. By the time YouTube implemented new guidelines in the end of 2015, the most exclusive set of creators they had were the Google preferred lineup, and DeFranco was not a part of that. YouTube's guidelines were quite general, and content that may be about certain events, particularly ones that involve tragedy, could be demonetized. Philip DeFranco's style makes him particularly susceptible to this. When he was a smaller YouTuber, he'd go for very classic clickbait. Now he's more reputable. His brand of titling involves naming each and every story that he includes, and works in a way of enticing the viewer in. Having multiple stories should hit multiple demographics, right? But it also makes it incredibly easy for YouTube to exactly explain why they may not like a topic or a video and may find it ineligible for monetization. Many of you will know my channel has covered political topics in the past, and although they've sometimes been sensitive, an overwhelming amount of them have not been demonetized. This may surprise some of you to know, but it is true. With Philip DeFranco though, 3 of his 4 topics in a video may be perfectly suitable for monetization. However, all it takes is one topic to be inappropriate and the other topics are taken out too. That is the problem when you try to kill a few birds with one stone. So it's possible that Philip DeFranco has not been specifically targeted, but is just one of the many who have been demonetized due to the new indiscriminate guidelines. And those who haven't been affected? Well, it's just different rules for them. DeFranco isn't individually being targeted, he's just not in the in-group. and he's been one of the hardest impacted because of the style of his videos that encompass certain sensitive topics, and it's clear that YouTube still have no clue what they're really doing. The general demonetization approach, however, lies on the assumption that the topics covered are actually being demonetized on other channels as well. For example, Philip DeFranco covers a bullying incident and it gets demonetized as part of the greater video, and it would obviously make sense if other videos on the topic were being demonetized too. I do not know that, I cannot confirm that. You'd probably have to actually carry out research into whether there is an exceptionalism occurring. People who talk about a wide range of slightly more serious topics have often found themselves demonetized. Another example of that is the Rubin Report. Because they cover so much, there's going to be something that hits a soft spot, even though they may cover it in a completely respectful manner. And Philip DeFranco, a man who would check this for himself, must understand that this is the scenario, right? But this is where I bring in the third option. Because although I'm not an avid viewer of the DeFranco show, I had to watch a fair few of his videos to familiarize myself with his content, and one thing that really stood out to me was how moderate he is. Even if he did cover more sensitive topics, he often handled it with a nuance that I can see being completely open to support from YouTube and monetization. Like many of the Daily Show hosts they shove in our face, the only thing that differentiates DeFranco from these characters is the fact that he's based on YouTube and talks about their problems a bit. YouTube mates, there's nothing wrong with a bit of self-reflection. So for me, it comes down to this. YouTube implemented new guidelines. Now, they most likely were not directly targeting DeFranco and his content, but he was hit with a few other creators who've been covered under this general sweep of recent. However, when presented with this scenario, DeFranco went straight for the jugular, publishing a 6 million plus view video, and after a long line of incidents, it seems that although YouTube may not have the intent to make his situation worse, it's clear that they're not necessarily interested in helping him becoming exempt to these predicaments. To put it gently, the algorithms that they've created kinda suck, because it judges on topic alone rather than what the actual message is or how it's articulated. I'll point you in the direction again of Nerd City's video for this, that there are situations in which the bot isn't able to distinguish between a video telling you about why you shouldn't commit suicide and content such as the Logan Paul forest adventure. That does not make sense. Philip DeFranco epitomizes the sort of collateral damage of YouTube's new algorithm. Advertisers put their content on plenty of TV and news channels, and DeFranco's content is basically that, but a bit more profane. And let's face it, who gives a fuck about swearing? Sure, it's on a spectrum, but most videos, even videos on Google Preferred, have explicit language included. Essentially, it's the topics that get DeFranco, and it's the easy option for YouTube. But is it the right one? Often when having this discussion, there'll normally be one person who points out that it's YouTube's platform and therefore it is their prerogative to do what they want. And they are completely right. That's not the discussion that I'm trying to have today. To summarize, just because they can do it, doesn't mean they should do it. Given the sheer authority that YouTube has over the competition, it would be ideal if they could remain unbiased. And also, look out for some of their own creators who actually make decent, productive content. I think people are becoming increasingly sick of the celebrities they try to ship in each month. It seems tired and frustrating. Not because people hate celebrities, but because they don't lean on YouTube the same way that people like DeFranco have in the past. What makes so many stories inspiring about YouTube is that you, the ordinary person, can express your creativity, and people can actually support it in a creative way. You don't need any huge corporate investment, you just need a bit of intuition and a half-decent microphone, and camera in some instances. This spans over a wide range of topics, current affairs included. The thing is, suppressing the actual sensible takes on often complex topics and yet allowing the other corporations to populate the site is a risky business because they can survive without the site, and they have survived without the site. And then YouTube just becomes another funnel for mainstream media. And yes, people like DeFranco will obviously persist regardless of these circumstances, but he will not live forever, and eventually people will look towards new creators to try and fill the gap for the recent takes on these topics. The current algorithms that YouTube appear to have created do not benefit that, and that is a great shame. My main concern is that through that, you create a culture of two types of creators. People who don't really focus on delivering the news, but more on creating a highly committed cult following that will sustain them, and the other side being the corporate-sponsored, number-driven media who equally don't care on delivering news. And I do not like that prospect. I think the likes of CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, etc. are shit. I can't stand how they all go into their content with such a thinly veiled, pre-aligned agenda. And you know what? I can say that because it's my fucking opinion. And that's what people want to hear. When you watch these news channels, it often feels like you're not hearing that opinion, and more what they think will make people tune in. Gaining respect from being reasonable is such a gradual process because it doesn't rely on those immediate emotional reactions that may be elicited from the audience in light of events. It relies on on actual rationality, reflection, and consideration. However, once that reasonability becomes a trusted source, it can genuinely aid how people respond to crises in the future. That's why I think DeFranco's brand of commentary, whether entirely earnest or not, is still an important one. People tend to say that his complaints come across as self-centered and egocentric, and I think that is a justified critique. When rewatching the video, some of his statements can come across as a bit awkward. But whether his motivations are focused around his own interests or not, his complaints still have a applicability that I personally believe to be beneficial to creator well-being. So I guess the real integrity test will be if he does choose to leave the site, how ardently he will continue to report on such issues affecting creators. Of course, I do not believe he will leave the site. Regardless of the network he creates, YouTube is so front and center that it would take a monumental shift to steal even a fraction of the power away from them. The truth is, as the site expands in its grasp and develops further, the opportunities for new creators will typically pivot. Doors will open and doors will close. But we don't want any of those doors to be fully locked, nor do we want certain doors to only be open to very few people with less than amiable intentions at that. We want people to still have a chance, especially if that chance involves discussing topics in an actually reasonable and sensible way. Even now, we do not have enough of that. I can't look in Philip DeFranco's mind and completely read his intentions, but the content that he puts out in the context of modern media is quite refreshing, and whether the reasons for YouTube preventing it from reaching his audience are justified or not, it would be a great shame to lose that, either from him or from the future videos that may appear down the road. I believe that YouTube has great opportunity to platform people with really interesting ideas, and I hope they don't shelve that model because they're afraid of tackling proper discussion, which, although sometimes hard, is highly important. Don't sell that off to corporations who have one singular agenda: news for views. And as for audiences that are in question today, stay aware. Keep track of your favorite creators, especially if they appear to be in the scope of the YouTube algorithms. Even if DeFranco plugging in the rest of his social media seems slightly obnoxious, it's not completely without meaning or merit. And although DeFranco isn't someone who I'm particularly concerned about, he's pretty much set both on and off the platform, I would still like to see the cream rising to the top, if you know what I mean. To the creators who want to cover these topics, the craft is still there. It just might require a bit more elbow grease than was known to the genre before. The ideas that we speak about today are not meant to extinguish hope within the creators, but it should spur us to pay attention to something that Philip DeFranco embodies: the grassroots creator who does not conform to YouTube's current guidelines. And you can call him entitled, you can call him spoiled, you can call his complaints unnecessary because of his success, but there are still greater implications, and sometimes it's important to disconnect the argument from the proponent, because regardless of the person espousing it, it could just as well apply to you. Never forget that. So to summarize, DeFranco is a target, however I highly doubt it's anything particularly personal. Although YouTube have an agenda, it's clear they're not hellbent on silencing other people, although the fact that DeFranco has been very vocally critical of them probably hasn't alleviated his turbulent relationship. Nonetheless, that does not mean we shouldn't be concerned, because it does mean that they're going after a genre of content, and they could really stifle the rise of future creators within that. And given that having rational voices in a world of reactionaries is more relevant than ever, I think it's an asset worth defending on YouTube. Just my opinion. Anyhow, what are your thoughts on the topic? What are your thoughts on Philip DeFranco? Should he be concerned? Should we be concerned? I would love to hear down below. I want to give a big thanks to the editors who have done another stellar job on the edit, and I will leave all their links in the description below and the pinned comment. Make sure to check them out if you have the time. Some of them do remake some great content. Also, if you want to talk, you can reach me on Twitter, you can reach me on Facebook. I'm trying to be more active in my Discord, though I have been very busy recently, and voice chat tends to drain a lot of my time. Not sure there's too much else to say. Hope everyone's having a good day, and I hope to see you again on this channel. Until then, however, I'm The Right Opinion, and I'll see you in the next one.